Greetings. Welcome once again to Pale Blooms and Beyond. Thank you for joining us today. Who hasn't heard the song Magic by the band Pilot? The 1974 track was written by band members Billy Lyall and my guest today, David Paton. Sadly, Billy passed away in 1989. During the summer of 1975, the song was hugely popular in Canada and the US, but also did well in the UK, Australia, and the Netherlands. The song is still played today on various stations and formats and has been covered by many times over the years, even in some commercials as well. David Paton is a Scottish bassist, guitarist, and singer-songwriter. He was a founding member of Pilot, along with Billy Lyall, Ian Bairnson, who recently passed on April 7th, and Stuart Tosh. I have to say, when I see Stuart's name, I oftentimes get it confused with Peter Tosh. And I think, okay, this is a reggae guy playing in a Scottish band. Then I have to recenter myself and remember who it really is. The band released 4 albums before calling it a day in 1977. Other hits that charted were January and Just a Smile. David went on to work with the Alan Parsons Project from 1975 to 1985. Over the years, Mr. Paton has worked with other artists as well as releasing his own solo material. Well, welcome, David.
Hi, Greg. Nice to be with you.
Thank you for joining me today. Go back a few years, I guess it's been. So you were born in Edinburgh, is that right?
That's correct. Yes, 1949. I'm a 49er.
49er. All right. Well, take us back to your earliest memories of your childhood, if you can.
I think one of the most significant memories was when I was 11 years old and my family had a vacation in northern Spain, San Sebastian area. I was left to my own devices, and I kind of wandered the streets, unaware that there were running bulls on the same day that I was wandering about. So the bulls approached, and I had to quickly dive out the way while this crowd of people and bulls thundered by. When they passed, it became very quiet, and I could hear a guitar playing. And I looked on the next window sill down, and there was a young guy my age, maybe 11 or 12 years old, sitting on the windowsill playing Spanish guitar. I was mesmerized, and I just sat down on the pavement and looked at him and listened and thought, that's the most beautiful thing I've heard. I wish I could do that. So after he finished playing, somebody called his name, Juan, come in, and he disappeared. And I went back to the hotel and told my parents about my experience with the bulls and also about the guitar player. And I said, I must have a guitar. I want a guitar. So they did. They bought me a guitar. And it somehow made its way back to Edinburgh in a cardboard box in the hold of the plane. It's more than I can say for nowadays. And I was fascinated by that instrument. You know, just the smell of the wood and the shape of the guitar. I was mesmerized by it, and I just sat and studied playing the guitar. So that's the most memorable part of my childhood, you know, especially as what it led on to.
Yeah, well, that's really interesting because I love the Spanish guitar. I love that sound in any kind of song. I've always appreciated that. It was almost like a two extremes: the violence with the bulls, and then,
Exactly.
and then the beauty of the guitar playing. You know, it's like
exactly,
wow.
yeah. And I was sitting down on the pavement, and you know there were jacaranda trees behind me, and the locals are walking by. You know, a few girls walking by, and they wore a kind of cologne called Aqua Lavanda, something like that. And you know, that smell as well. It always takes me back to that very moment of the serenity of the guitar music and the peacefulness. You know, there's just certain things that bring that back.
Isn't that something? Yeah.
Mm.
I get that too with, a lot of times it's where I first heard the song. I'll hear it again. I'll remember that place where I was, and it's always,
Yeah, get that.
music with memories makes for the whole package, it does.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, were either one of your parents musically inclined at all?
Yeah, both of them were. My mother was a dancer,
Mhm.
a ballroom dancer, and she won a few competitions locally. My father, he loved opera and introduced me to Puccini, um, and also he sang locally around the clubs. He was a club singer, singing Scottish type music, and he was a Robert Burns fanatic, and would do a thing called the Address to the Haggis, which we have on Burns night. Yeah, there's a lot of music in the family.
Yes, that Robert Burns will rear its ugly head, so, can you remember your first single or album, either that someone got for you or that you purchased that you got?
um, she's my wife now, but my girlfriend at the time when I must have been 17, I think, when Electric Ladyland came out, which was Jimi Hendrix album.
Yeah.
She went into the record store to buy that for me. She didn't realize it was a double album, and in the middle was a load of pictures of naked ladies across the album. And when she bought it, the guy opened it up in the shop, to her embarrassment, to see what was in the side of his album. That was memorable, and that was a great album for me to listen to. It was mind-blowing.
Yeah. It was unlike anything else at the time, I'm sure. Yeah.
Actually, yeah, the production was amazing. Put a pair of headphones on and listen to that album. It's amazing.
Well, what were some other bands or artists that you liked as a teenager?
I quickly discovered Genesis.
Okay.
In the late 60s. I also enjoyed Yes. Chris Squire, the bass player, was a big influence on me. He played a Rickenbacker bass, which was what I adopted as well with Pilot. I liked King Crimson, and it was that kind of progressive music that I enjoyed the most. Although the Beatles kind of overtook everything else. They were just the top of the tree. They were untouchable, and the Stones to a certain degree. But that was the kind of music I liked to listen to. Complicated music that made you think, "Wow, how did they do that?" The musicianship as well. It just astonished me that they were so accomplished.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I love early Genesis. Really some, and then some of those really extended pieces are really, like you said, they're
Wow.
complex, but so melodic too. So wonderfully done.
Oh, absolutely. I particularly remember the album Foxtrot, which I played over and over and over.
Great album. Well, at what age did you start really thinking about maybe music might be in my future?
Well, from the age of 11, I played the guitar, and I met up with a guy at school when I was about 14 or 15, who was also a guitar player and quite an accomplished guitar player. And we kind of got together in a bedroom and just played guitars. At that time, he couldn't make his mind up if he wanted to be a bass player or a guitar player, and I was exactly the same. So we would play Beatles songs together, and we'd swap. Sometimes I'd play bass, sometimes he'd play bass. And eventually we started getting gigs. The band was called The Elements. Okay. Not very original, but nothing. Yes, so we started gigging at 15. When I say gigging, my sister was engaged to a guitar player in Edinburgh who was in an established band. He would let us get up during the interval and perform. We're only 15 years old, so it was taken quite lightheartedly, but for us, it meant a lot. And then when I left school, I joined one of Edinburgh's established bands called the Beachcombers.
Okay.
And that was it. That was me involved in music full time. And these days you could gig 6 nights a week without any trouble, and sometimes 2 times on a Saturday night, two different gigs. You know, it was very healthy back then. And you know, there would be cafes, but there wouldn't be pubs and things. The nightclubs mainly had cafes where you would have a Coca-Cola or a coffee. You know, right. I seem to remember that for some reason, because now alcohol seems to be everywhere.
Right. So you were playing, gigging in and around Edinburgh at that time.
Yeah, in and around Scotland. We did travel, you know, up to 100 miles north or south. Yeah, it was a popular band.
Okay. Okay. Did you have any releases or any output?
We did. We did. We saw that CBS were holding auditions in a club in London called the Marquee Club. Mm-hmm. So we traveled down from Edinburgh to London, which is 400 miles. Okay. And we took part in the auditions, and we passed. We passed the audition, and we were also given a residency in the Marquee Club every second Sunday. So we did pretty well out of that. We had 2 releases. Unfortunately, they didn't chart, but it was an experience doing that nevertheless. They had session musicians play on our first release, and we managed to convince the producers that we can actually play, so let us play at the second, which happened. That was great. Great experience recording in London studios when you're a youngster of that age, of 16 or 17. You know, I say that, but at that time there was talent around, like Stevie Wonder and Steve Winwood. You know, they were only that age, even younger. So there was a lot of talent around at that time, young talent.
Yeah. Well, I've heard that story too. The Marquee was the place to be and to get a residency and to play there. I've heard that. So that was always a good start. Well, you and then relocating to London. You know, I've heard that also as well. If you really wanted to get any kind of recording career or any kind of exposure, you really needed to. That was
certainly then. I'm not sure what it was like now, but certainly then. And we did that. We lived in London for about a year. Yeah. And came back with our tails between our legs. Unsuccessful, but at least we tried.
That's right. That's right. Well, you also, I guess your next band was Boots. And you 2 singles with The Animal and Me, and Keep Your Love Light Burning.
That's right.
Yeah. Who was in that band? Sorry.
Well, nobody that anybody would know. They were just local guys. Although they were pretty successful in Scotland, that was about as far as it went. Okay. Yeah, but as I said, my first band was the Beachcombers. The Beachcombers evolved into Boots. Okay. We had to change our name because some other band had registered the name the Beachcombers. So that's why we changed the name to Boots, to record anyway.
Right. Okay. Well, and then you were in Bay City Rollers for a short time, but you didn't do any recording with them.
I didn't. I did. What happened? They came. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they came after Boots. Yeah. And I enjoyed my time with them. They were another hugely popular band. And, you know, the Screaming Girls were already there. And for any A&R man to come up from London and see this, you know, they were just knocked out. They couldn't believe, they thought it was staged, but it wasn't. Every gig we went to, it was Screaming Girls. And, you know, you'd finish the song and I'd put my pick in my mouth and I'd have to put my hands down to the girls at the front of the stage so they could hold my hand until the song. That's what I was like. But, you know, that was a bit too, it was too boy bandish for me, although I enjoyed it. I didn't like that side of it. I thought, you know, I'm a bit more serious than that. But it was a lot of fun. It was like being in a boys' club, you know, and I enjoyed it a lot. We did a lot of things together We drove to Spain, for instance, and stayed there for a week, slept on the beach, and we did a lot of boy things that I just thought, this is a good life. I like being a musician.
Right, especially when you see the screaming girls, and that's an attraction, right? That's what I want to do. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
after this, I believe, Fresh, and then the name changed to Christian with a Y, Christian.
The same situation. There was another band registered with the name, so we had to change the name from Fresh to Christian. Yeah. And that was a more progressive band. We attempted songs, songs, and especially Free. We really loved the band Free. We played a lot of their music, and we introduced some original songs as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah, even the name of the song "Nursery Lane" kind of harkens to Genesis.
Sure.
Nursery crime. Yeah.
Nursery crime, exactly.
Right. Are any of these still available, or are they out there? Did they ever get any kind of production or?
I don't think they were ever re-released. So I have seen things on, for sale. But the price is ridiculous although it's a collector's item, I suppose, for the people that I know. I have copies myself, but that's just for nostalgic sake. That's all.
Yeah. You ever go back and listen to them?
Yeah. They're posted. They're on YouTube.
Okay. Yeah, I know a lot of musicians. They say they can't go back and listen to something from a bygone era, or early on. Maybe it was a little cringeworthy to them, or whatnot. Or some just like to say, well, I put it to bed. I don't want to go back. I'm looking at what I'm doing now and for the future. So it's interesting to look at that. Well, talk about the formation of Pilot. How did you guys get together?
Well, you mentioned that I was in the Bay City Rollers for a while, and so was Billy Lyall.
Okay.
Billy Lyall joined the Bay City Rollers after I did, and he stayed with them longer than me. I left when they were about to sign their recording deal. I thought, this is a junction in my life where I think, do I want to go this way, or will I go another way? And I decided that I didn't want to be a famous Bay City roller. So I left the band. Billy stayed on. But Billy and I used to attend the library, and we would pick up music for classical guitar and flute. Billy was a very accomplished flautist. So we used to do that quite a bit while we were in the Rollers together. And when the Rollers finished, I still attended the library for music, for guitar. And one day I just happened to bump into Billy Lyall, and he said to me, I've left Bay City Rollers and I'm now working as an engineer in a studio in Edinburgh. Why don't you come down? He said, I'm writing songs. Maybe you could write a song and I'll play piano for you, and you could play bass and guitar for me. So that was the start of Pilot. And we did that at least once a week. We would go to the studio. I would write a song, Billy would write a song, and we'd record the two songs on the one night. And it eventually just progressed so that we had a lot of songs. We had a couple of, maybe a year's worth of songs of going there every week. So there was a lot of material. And friends were saying, you mentioned Billy and I wrote Magic. Well, I wrote Magic, and the first album, we called all the songs Paton and Lyall compositions, because we were so influenced by the Beatles, who it was always Lennon McCartney.
Right.
So the first album, we called all the songs Paton and Lyall. But Magic was a song that I had written, and I used to perform it in clubs in Edinburgh as well. And my friends were saying, you should do something with that song. It's probably a hit song. And we were reluctant, we just enjoyed working in the studio and putting the songs together. But eventually Stuart Tosh came in to help us with drums. And he said, I know a guy that works in EMI. And we traveled to London to EMI to meet this guy. And he kind of flipped, you know, he thought, wow, these songs are great. We want to sign you. This was EMI, you know, and this was EMI that owned Abbey Road Studio. You know, we couldn't say no to that because can we record in Studio 2 in Abbey Road? Yes, you can. Okay, we'll sign with you. That was it.
Well, you know, that's interesting too, because, you know, you hear about so many stories of knocking on doors and not getting an answer, and people struggling for years sometimes, you know, to get a contract. But it was good that you had that contact at EMI. That always helped. Yeah.
You're always looking for a way in. And, you know, although I was only 22 at that time, I'd still tried from the age of 16 to become successful. So at that time, you know, it seemed like a lot of time had gone by, but not really, you know, it's only 6 years or so.
Yeah. When you're young, it does. The time goes by slower. Yeah. As you get older, it's just like, where's the time go? Right. Well, what were the other band members' influences that they brought to the band?
Billy, he played in the Royal Marines. He was in the band of the Royal Marines.
Okay.
Very young age. And he was brought up classically. It was mainly classical music. In fact, when he joined the Bay City Rollers, he didn't know how to play a 12-bar. He would, and I was kind of thinking, well, what have we got here? The guy can't even play a 12-bar. But one day I heard him playing classical music. He was playing a piece called Enter the Queen of Sheba. It was, you know, on the piano. And I sat back and I thought, wow, this guy can really play. And that's when we kind of gelled, you know. I thought, oh, I'm interested in this kind of music, you know, can we do something together? Hence the flute and guitar. So that was the big influence with Billy. It was classical music. And I taught him how to play a 12-bar, which was a revelation to him, and how to improvise, you know. Yeah, and that was it. As for Ian, Ian was so well respected in Edinburgh. He played in a band called East West, and he'd have guys at the end of the show, guys would stand at the front of the stage and they would get a kind of masterclass from Ian, because he would stand there and they would fire questions at him, and he would even play. He would show him the tone settings on his guitar, lots of things. You know, he was so well respected at that time, and we were lucky to get him in Pilot. Yeah. And Stuart, great drummer. He was well known in Edinburgh for the bands that he played in, and how good he was as a drummer. So it was good to get him as well.
Well, I must be doing the rounds with interviewing Scottish musicians. Were you familiar with, speaking of progressive, were you familiar with Clouds, the band Clouds?
Vaguely.
Billy, that was one of my Billies that I told you that I interviewed. Billy Ritchie, or William Ritchie.
Okay, Scots, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he was a keyboard player, and really predated Keith Emerson and Rick Wakeman, you know, even before what they did. They said that they were kind of the, you know, earlier prog. It wasn't called prog then, but he talked about one concert where another Marmalade, the Marmalade, was there at the concert, and they were just in awe, you know, looking up at him, you know, or the band playing. And it was a three-piece, you know, which was kind of unheard of at that time, but very interesting. How, again, talking to that, and it was Alan Whitehead, which was the only
yeah, I know of Alan Whitehead,
the only English member of at that time of the Scottish band. Okay, well, first you did sign with EMI. The first album, from the album of the same name, who came up with the title, first of all?
I don't think it was any of the guys in the band. Okay. It would have been somebody who helped us design the album cover, or you know, I think we were kind of stuck with that. And the same with the name Pilot, you know, it wasn't a member of the band, it was a secretary that came up with it. And interestingly, Pilot is the initials of each member of the band. We were a three-piece without Ian for the first album. That was Paton, Lyall and Tosh. So we've got the PLT there. And it was a secretary that said, you know, why don't you call it Pilot? Oh, what a great idea. So I think it'd be the same with the album, the album of the same name. We thought it was quirky, and it is.
It is. I mean, it's memorable too. And I didn't know that about the initials and the name. Know that. Well, of course, the album yielded the hit Magic. And that has just taken on a life of its own over the years. I'm sure you've had tons of emails and people talking about how much that song has meant to them, and to you, for sure, over the years. And you still get requests for it, I'm sure, when you play. So it's that's a mark of a good quality song, you know, that'll last over the years like that. Yeah,
it's 50 years old.
Yeah.
So it's remarkable for I have grandchildren now, and when they introduce me to their friends, you know, this is my pops. and you know, oh, you wrote Magic. Yeah, I wrote Magic. And that's a thrill for me to think that this generation, you know, knows my song after all this time. It's brilliant. It'll still be here when I'm not. You know, it's great.
Right. It has, and it's you're doing, you know, did your part of bridging that generation gap when it's a song like that all generations can enjoy. You know, that's something to be said about that for sure. Well, off of that, I used to have the 45, and I was looking for it before the interview, and I guess I got rid of it because I got the CDs with the song on there. But I used to have that 45. I remember that. Also off of that album, I also like Lucky for Some, and and of course Just a Smile was another hit. But I think Lucky for Some, that was a really nice track.
Well, thank you. I just re-recorded a lot of these songs and put them on an album called the Magic Collection.
Yes.
And Lucky for Some is on there. That's also one of my favorite songs as well.
Yes, yes. I was going to get to that a little later, but you can tell me about the re-recording and how that process, and if you enjoyed that, and how some songs came out maybe better than you originally did them. Well, also the second album, moving on to Second Flight, came out in 1975, and January was the hit off that one. Another nice track. But then I think the song that I like probably the most off of that album is Dear Artist. I think that's mine.
That's a Billy Lyall composition, and I think it's a really clever composition. And also Billy orchestrated that as well. You know, he's in charge of the orchestral arrangement. He was very accomplished at that kind of thing. And in fact, he did the orchestral arrangement for quite a few of the Pilot songs. In fact, I think he did January. I think he did the orchestral arrangement for that too. But Dear Artist was just such a great idea. And it was just after seeing an artist on the pavement, drawing on the pavement, that he came up with that whole song. And I thought, this is so clever. Yeah, and Billy's songs were like that. They were really clever songs.
Yeah, well, it wasn't one that was going to ever be a huge hit, you know, because it's a little slower paced, but those are the kind of tracks I go back to. Those are the ones that I like, you know, that evoke a mood. And that one surely does that. Well, yeah. Let me ask you, because you and Ian worked on Alan Parsons Project, Tales of Mystery and Imagination. Now, was that before Morin Heights or during the same time or after? Do you remember?
I think it would have been before Modern Heights,
Okay, okay.
although I'm not 100% sure. Modern Heights was 77. It'd be roughly the same time.
Okay.
Hmm,
Okay.
difficult one. I never thought that one.
I stumped you.
Yeah.
Well, it was, I guess, because Alan, had produced you guys, so that was kind of an easy transition, right, for you to work with Alan.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. Yeah. And to me, recording that first project album, it was pilot. It was the four of us back in the studio together with Alan producing, and the only additional member was Eric Wolfson. So, it was great to be back in the studio as pilot. In fact, I think we were in Studio 2 in Abbey Road as well. So, yeah, great, a great thrill.
Yeah, well, that's how I was introduced to, Alan Parsons Project, through the first one, Tales of Mystery and Imagination, based on Edgar Allan Poe. It's some really nice tracks on there. How was it working in the studio with Alan on that? How was it?
Alan's, he was at that time a very quiet man. He didn't speak much at all. He would sit at the desk and just tweak away, blah, 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 and without saying anything, and he would play it again, play it again. The engineer would play it again, and he would maybe mess about and play it 5, 6 times, and then he would just say, "Any thoughts?" And he'd say, "Sounds great, Alan, sounds great, just keep doing it." Musically, he wasn't so involved in the construction of the songs, but certainly as far as production's concerned, I mean, wow, what a wonderful producer. I could sit beside him, not say anything at all, as I've said, and just listen and watch and learn of all the things he was doing. And it's just wonderful to watch a producer of that caliber working his magic, and that's what they're doing. The song is evolving each time they run it again, and maybe you would think you would get fed up of hearing it after 20 runs, but no, because each time you hear it, it's evolving. It's a great pleasure, especially if it's your own music or just something that you've played on. It's great to listen to it that many times. It just takes on it comes a different level when you're so deeply involved in it, and you're listening to every single instrument and what he's doing with compressors and reverbs and delays and all the rest of it. And each little tweak can make you go, wow, oh, that's great. Yeah, keep that. Alan was like that. It's wonderful to work with him.
Yeah, he was a little bit ahead of his time, and a lot of the music, has withstood the test of time. It's still very much modern today, so he was definitely, at the forefront of that, had some great concepts and great ideas behind those. I like how each album is a different concept like that.
Well, that was all Eric Wolfson, and Eric doesn't really enough credit for the input that he had, but the whole thing was Eric's idea. He decided to call it the Alan Parsons Project, which he kicked himself for later on. Wished he'd called it the Eric Wolfson Project, but Alan had a name as a producer, so that's why he chose that name. And he wrote all these wonderful songs. Alan's contribution to the songwriting would maybe be the odd instrumental here and there. And they did the same thing as we did with the pilot first album, and Lennon and McCartney did. They called them the Wolfson Parsons compositions, when actually they were all Wolfson compositions. A lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah, Eric, fellow Scotsman as well. He, it was kind of that connection there. With you guys and him and everything. Yeah. Well, go ahead.
Yeah, we didn't know Eric before we saw him with Alan in Abbey Road in the canteen, and we thought that he was going to be managing Alan. That's what we thought the connection was, until Eric approached us and asked us if we would like to be involved in a new project that he was planning with Alan.
Yeah.
That was the start of it.
Okay. Well, of course, APP, shortened for Alan Parsons,
Yeah.
used quite a few different singers, yourself included, on the albums. But I think I like Eric's vocals the best.
Okay.
Yeah, they're kind of dreamy, but kind of, he's just got that wispiness of it. And
Yeah.
Chris Rainbow's another one. But
yeah. Absolutely.
But I think Eric's vocals really nice.
Chris, another Scotsman. There was a huge amount of Scottish blood in the project because Alan's mother was Scottish as well. A lot of people don't know. Alan's mother was Scottish, and we eventually had Stuart Elliott playing drums. He had a Scottish dad. So I think everybody in the band had some kind of Scottish connection. So I like to call it a Scottish band, not an English band.
Right. The Revenge of the Scots. You
They're
moved
everywhere.
to London, you were starting to take over a little bit of the territory. That's funny. Well, from the inside out.
Yeah.
Well, moving on to your third album with Pilot, Moraine Heights, recorded in Quebec. Find that interesting. With Roy Thomas Baker. Okay.
Yeah.
Another noted producer there. Yeah.
I think we were looking, Pilot were looking for a bit more edge in the music. We wanted it to be a bit more powerful. Alan's productions are pretty clinical, and we wanted that rough edge. And instead of spending a whole day doing a backing track, we wanted to just, be spontaneous and let's keep the first take, keep the second take, that kind of thing. And that's what Roy was like. Roy was a little bit off the ball, he would say, in the middle of winter in Canada, let's put the guitar speaker in the middle of the lake and we'll record it, with the microphone here in the studio. We did things like that, let's face the speaker cabinet towards that piece of glass and we'll record that. And that's great. I love that kind of experimental, futuristic way of looking at things. That was Roy. It was exciting working with Roy because he was a real ideas man, coming up with ideas for sounds and vocal ideas. My goodness, he'd had me singing one word, and then the next word would be on the other side of the speaker. So one word there, one word there, one word there, one word. Time-consuming, but fun. A lot of fun.
I wonder if he was a fan of Joe Meek.
Yeah, I'm sure he was. Absolutely.
He was Mad Hatter, but a real pioneer in that.
I'm sure.
Yeah. I like that too. When a producer will try different things like that. You're right, because you never know. What sound you might get, out of that.
That's
band.
Right. I think we did accomplish what we set out to do, was get that, heavier edge to our production with Roy. So we were quite happy with that album and the experience. It was his idea to go to Canada. That was wonderful. It was just wild. It was really good working in that studio. Great. Yeah,
good memories there. A couple of tracks off of that album that are I'm fond of. Running Water. I like the background vocals. Na 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 na. That's what really, to me, makes that. That yeah. I like that. And then Steps is another. Yeah.
Well, you've chosen two Ian Bairnson songs. Ian wrote both of these songs.
Yeah, those are. Let me ask you this, since you mentioned Ian. When did you hear? How did you hear about his passing?
Well, I knew he had been ill for a long time.
Yeah.
It was 2017 that we went to Japan for a few dates, and really Ian was showing signs of Alzheimer's at that time.
Yeah.
But I thought it'd be great for him to go to Japan and perform pilot songs. And at that time, we had introduced a few project songs into our set as well. And that was Ian's baby, I suppose. His guitar solos, especially his work in the project, is so recognizable, so Ian Bairnson. And it was a good thing to do, to go to Japan with Ian and do the last concert together, really. So from 2017, Ian had been showing signs of memory loss. In fact, particularly Magic, it's in quite a high key for me. It's in the key of G, which I can't sing it in that key now. And when we were in Japan, I said, Ian, we're going to be playing this in F. And he kind of shook his head. Well, he could play it note perfectly in the key of G, but come transposing it down to F, it confused him because of his condition. His long-term memory was perfect. His short-term memory, it just wasn't there. So occasionally he would start in the wrong key, but we'd quickly, transpose it down a tone. It just shows you how that condition affects you in that way. So from 2017, and then, we did record a couple of, I called them a pilot project album. First album was called A Pilot Project. It was Ian and I, and it was deliberate, APP, A Pilot Project. We did that on purpose. Yeah. And also that was a great help for Ian, because when Alan moved to America, he just dismissed Ian and Stuart, who had been touring with him on a regular basis, and they had played in South America, they played America. So Ian kind of had the rug pulled from under his feet when he was dismissed by Alan. It was a sore point, really. So to record an album, again, revisiting the pilot songs and the project songs, it was great for Ian to be doing that kind of thing. Yeah. And we had a lot of fun doing it, putting these songs together again, and listening to them and thinking, well, we've really got really close to that. But of course we would, because I was the bass player and I sang a lot of the songs, and Ian was a guitar player. We played acoustic guitar together on the songs, so I thought we got pretty close to the original productions with a few embellishments.
Right. Well, that was good, that he, because he was familiar with the music, even though his mind started to go. Yeah, it was my dad passed away from Alzheimer's as well, so I know I can relate to that. Just seeing.
Yeah, my mum was the same. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So so it wasn't a shock. It was kind of expected. Yeah. And I keep in touch with his wife Layla, and I would always get updates from Layla and also Ian's sister as to how he was. He spent his last couple of years in a care home, being really well looked after. They really were attentive towards him. And so I was getting an update, and I knew it was very close. When the end came, I knew it was going to happen within a day or two. So it was very upsetting, especially as Ian was only 69. That's pretty young to be passing with Alzheimer's.
Yes, it is. Yes.
And such a talented man, the best guitar player I've ever worked with. Wonderful player.
Well, moving on to 1977's Two's a Crowd. Was that named that because it was just down to you and Ian? Is that why?
It was.
Okay.
It was, and that was an obvious title for us. And again, we had Alan Parsons back on board with us, which was great. Great to work with Alan again. I'm happy with that album and happy with the sound. We realised Alan Parsons is part of the pilot sound, and it was great to revisit that situation again. Yeah.
Do you still today contact with Alan and revisit those and talk about those old days with him?
No, not so much.
So much, yeah.
No, I don't. No, I don't keep in touch with Alan at all.
Okay. So the band called it a day in 1977. And then you worked again with Alan Parsons Project. The second album, I, Robot. I think that's my favorite Alan Parsons Project album. I think it is. And it may be just have to do with the age I was when I heard it. And it was a step forward for me from Tales of Mystery and Imagination. I think it was. So many great tracks on there. I Wouldn't Want to Be Like You, Some Other Time, Breakdown, Don't Let It Show, Day After Day. I mean, it's the whole album's chock full of really great tracks on.
I agree. Yeah, it kept progressing, and as you say, each theme was totally different, and the concepts were all different. Even the production seemed to sound different on each album, and you know, right up to Eye in the Sky, or maybe slightly beyond that, it just got better and better and better, as far as I was concerned. You know, but you can ask any Project fan, what's your favorite album? Everybody will give you a different album.
A different one, right? That's it. Yeah, that's good to hear that. I mean, you know, if it was just one, then you might think, well, why did we record so many?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. So, the third album, Pyramid. Another nice album. I love the cover photo. The cover, was that Hypnosis? Was that?
It might have been. I wasn't involved in that kind of that side of things, but
I think
certainly has hints of it.
They did a lot of great album covers. My favorite track is the instrumental opener, Voyager.
Yes.
Yeah, and again, that was way ahead of its time, I think. But then followed by a song that you sing, What Goes Up. Yeah.
Yeah, I love singing.
Yeah.
You know, it's quite a vocal range in that.
Yeah.
And Eric sung the demo for me. You know, and he sings, and I can't, as you said earlier, it's a light voice, slightly almost falsetto. So he could get, but I had to sing. He wanted me to sing it in full voice.
Right.
Yeah, a great song to sing.
Yeah, it is, and that's probably my second favorite of that. And they just kind of, the way it segs into that song, I like that. Okay, so you and this is I found this interesting too. You and Ian got to back Kate Bush on her debut, The Kick Inside, and also her follow-up, Lionheart.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That came about. Andrew Powell had a lot to do with the Alan Parsons Project and orchestral arrangements. He also arranged the orchestra for our Sing Magic for pilot. And it was Andrew Powell that called me and said, I'm producing a young artist who's just signed to EMI. Her name's Kate Bush, and she's only 17. I want you to play bass. That was the initial introduction. So it was Air Studios in London, George Martin's studio, that we did the first album in. And initially we just, all the musicians got together, and Andrew Powell said to Kate, play the guys the song that we're going to record. And she sat down and, you know, like an angel, just sang this song. And we all had notepads in our hands, and we all just, you know, were gobsmacked. What are we hearing here? This is amazing. And she was not perfect, and the song was just so complex. You know, I just thought, this is going to be a lot of fun doing this album. I think we all felt the same thing. This is a gem. This is really great. That's how it started. You know, great.
Well, it's interesting doing these interviews, the connections that I find. I recently spoke with Pat Martin. Are you familiar with Pat Martin? He was in a country and western band, Unicorn, a UK band, but they were.
Yeah, I know the name. Yeah.
David Gilmour produced 3 of their albums.
Wow.
So prior to her the kick inside, this Pat Martin played on Kate's demos,
Wow.
which helped her get that EMI contract.
Wow. Didn't know that.
So he has that in his CV.
Of course, absolutely.
Yeah. So it's really interesting, the interrelating and then the connections that I find
Sure.
with you musicians. Yeah, I remember the first time I heard her Saturday Night Live when she was Kate was on there. It blew me away, and I think a lot of it was her voice. It was so unique and so different. And
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The compositions were really complex, and the themes that she used, you know, Heathcliff. Yeah, wow, this is off the wall. Love that.
And of course, she's gone on to become, pretty big, and several really great classic albums. Eve, going back to Alan Parsons, the album Eve from 1979. Talking about album covers, I remember when I first got that, looking at it, and it's like, okay, the two ladies on the cover, are they real? Are they mannequins? And I would spend like, a long time, trying to figure that out. But it was, that's a mark of a good album cover that gets you intrigued with it. Again, another instrumental, Lucifer. That's
great.
one that I like. Yeah, it is. But again, top track, I think, and it's one that you sing, I'd Rather Be a Man. I think that's that was one I played quite a bit.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm thrilled.
Yeah, I still go back and listen to that album as well. All about Parsons material.
That song was actually about a person and not a female.
Okay.
But I can't disclose who it is.
Okay.
I can't, no. But it was about a person that Eric Wilson was having trouble with at the time. And if you listen to the words, you'll maybe, maybe get it. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. I like songs that end up being different than what you imagine, they were really about. Like you said, you're thinking it may be about a female, or it's about this type of person, or I don't know if you remember the song Henry Gross did, American singer. He did Shannon, and he had a really high octave voice too. But Shannon, you think it's going to be about a girl, whatever, but it was about his dog. His dog was Shannon. Yeah, so I like that when you find out it's different than what you thought.
I like the James Taylor song Fire and Rain, when I found out what that was about.
Right.
I just thought it's so clever to write a song like that. About being in the story I heard, but that he was drying out from drugs and whatnot, and he met another girl in the clinic, and she was discharged and was flying back to wherever it was she came from, and the plane crashed that she was flying in. And when you listen to the words, you just think that's so cleverly put together to describe, his experience of knowing this girl and what happened to her.
Yeah. I think a lot of people still don't know. I heard that same story. What you're telling me, I heard that too. Yeah.
Okay.
I think with the internet these days, probably back when you were starting out, it was harder to maybe define or describe what things might be about. But today, you can go do research, and find 7 different interpretations or whatever. But then moving on to the next album, I think Turn of a Friendly Card is my second favorite.
Yeah, I love that album.
Yes, isn't it? It's all well put together so well. Games people play, Time. Oh God, that song gets me every time. I hear that. Yeah, and of course the 16-minute epic track, title track, is I love that too. I love that.
Yeah, I love it. I love it all. Yeah, I can listen to that again and again. Really like that album.
Yeah, that is. And then you sang on a couple of other songs a little later. "Children of the Moon" from "Eye in the Sky."
Love that song too.
Yeah, I do too. And then "Let's Talk About Me" from "Vulture Culture."
Right.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that
Yeah,
one.
good songs, all good songs. I was pleased that I was asked to sing these songs. It
Right.
was a pleasure.
Yeah. Well, that's your contribution. Not well, your bass playing as well, but then also you always have that to go back to, and
Yeah.
say, here we go. Here I am. Here, here I am. It's my contribution. Your contribution.
Yeah.
So, here and then another band that you worked with, one of my favorites, Camel. I was talking about Proggy. That's another one that's Stationary Traveler album, the title track plus Cloak and Dagger Man.
Yeah.
And here's that connection again. Do you remember playing with Ton Scherpenzeel?
I do.
Okay.
Yes, that was one of my favorite. But Kayak, was it? Was he in Kayak?
Yes, Kayak. Yeah.
I still love that band. Yeah.
I did an interview with him, so I'll send you again. Well, I think I sent you my link for my channel, but watch that interview with Ton.
I'd like to.
Yeah. When you have time, I know that. But go ahead. What were you going to say?
I've met Todd obviously a couple of times, but when I meet people like that influenced me when I was younger, I have to say to them, that you were a big influence on me, and I just loved Kayak, especially. Even to this day, I still love. And he sent me a lot of the albums that I loved, so I was really pleased. He's such a friendly, lovely guy. Really nice to meet him.
Yes, he is. He was really gracious to do an interview too. Did you enjoy your work with Rick Wakeman? How about that?
Oh yeah. Rick was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
When I was introduced to Rick, it was in a studio in England and near where I lived. And the manager of the studio asked me along, will you come along and play on a Rick Wakeman track? Sure. And I wasn't sure if Rick would be there, but he was. He was sitting at the control room when I walked in. And he said, oh, nice to meet you. He said, we've got the track up ready for you to play to. He said, just do what you want. He said, I'm going away for a cup of coffee. And off he went. Mm-hmm. And I said, let me hear the track. And they put on this track. Well, can you imagine listening to a aggressive Rick Wakeman track, with these 5/8 and 6/4s and whatnot, all these different bars. And he just left me to it. There wasn't a sheet for me to follow. It was just play. And I did. I played. It took me maybe 20 minutes to get familiar with what the song was all about. And when he came back in, he said, yeah, great. He says, let's do another one. So it went on like that. And before I knew it, I was touring in Rick's band. And eventually we were playing somewhere like Brighton or somewhere down the very south coast of England. And after the gig, he said to me, do you want to come for a walk along the promenade with me? And I said, sure, yeah. I just thought it was a nice evening. He just wanted to walk. So we went for a walk, and he said to me, I want to go on tour, just you and I. He said, I know you play Spanish guitar and your fretless bass and whatnot. He said, I'd like to do a couple of albums and call them the Classical Connection album. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but the albums were the Classical Connection. And it was Rick's music played in a kind of classical style. Which was great, another challenge for me. And also I get to play Spanish guitar or classical guitar on stage. There's a great video on YouTube of us performing live, and we play Eleanor Rigby together. And a great interpretation. He's done a brilliant job of it.
I'll have to watch that. I hadn't seen that one.
Really good. It's a long piece of music. It's really good though. And it was a pleasure working with Rick. He was a lot of fun and so down to earth. I love when a musician you meet is not a disappointment to you. He's one of the boys, and that was Rick, is one of the boys. And we did a lot of things together. We traveled to Swaziland. I don't know what it's called now. It's changed its name. We did a video in Swaziland. We slept in the bush, and we went to lots of places. We went to Israel together. We just had a good time together making music, and that's what I love. I love a good time making music and being comfortable as well. And it's a privilege being a musician and living that kind of lifestyle.
Yeah. Well, how was the audience in Swaziland? What was there in Swaziland?
Well, that was a video shoot. Shoot. We were in a game park, and a lot of the video shoot involved things like rhinos and elephants, stuff like that.
Well,
that was our audience.
That was your audience. A real feral audience. Yeah. Well, that's good. Yeah, like you said, when you meet someone who's down to earth like that, and I have to say, with most of the interviews that I've done, that's the type of individual that I find, and I think those are the ones that are receptive, that are more receptive to doing the interview.
Sure, I get that. Yeah, but there's still there's a lot involved in that, because you're talking to artists and you're talking about them, and they're talking about themselves as well. So they're coming across as nice guys.
Good point. Yes, that's right. Yes. I'll remember that. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's see the real. Yeah. Let's see I want to hear the real David Paton. Yeah.
Yeah, it's only when you actually work with an artist that you realize if they're one of the boys or not.
Yeah.
And I worked with Albert Hammond for 3 years. I found him hard work as well. And it's disappointing when you like somebody's music so much, and then you found out that he's not a likable person. He's a narcissist. You get a lot of narcissistic behavior from artists sometimes, and it can be disappointing and a little bit irritating.
Yes, you hit the nail. I said most. I did have a couple like that.
Okay.
One of them I didn't even post. I just said, I'm not going to do this. The other one I said I'm going to, because then all the viewers can see what they're really like, right?
Sure.
I just said, okay.
Yeah.
I admire this individual, but like I talked to one of my friends, I said, sometimes your idols or what have you, better just left on the shelf, and to kind of worship or whatever. That's a strong word, but admire from afar. It's better not to meet those people.
Exactly, because you can be so disappointed in some. But like you, most of them that I've met have been great, really good fun. And the bigger they are, the nicer they are, I find.
Right.
People like Elton John and people like that, they're just so nice. You couldn't be a nicer guy than Elton John for me.
Yeah. Well, you also did some studio session work with some big names as well.
Yeah.
Care to name drop
a few? Well, I might mention a couple that you don't know. I mean, I worked with Paul Rogers from Free, and I mentioned that I played in a band, and we played a lot of free music. I did a lot of work with Paul Rogers on recordings, demos, basically. And he asked me to tour with him, but I was working with Fish at the time, and I couldn't get out of that. And who else? Paul McCartney. I worked with Paul McCartney. I sung on Mulligan Tire with him, which was a great thrill. To stand beside your idol, he's kind of role model for me. To stand beside him in Studio 2 in Abbey Road and sing his song along with him and get smiles and winks and all the rest,
there you go.
That's wonderful.
There you go. Yeah. I've heard he's a really nice, like you mentioned, down to earth kind of individual.
I think so. Yeah. I got that impression.
Yeah.
And I spent some time with Linda as well. After singing on the song, Linda said to me, "Come along to the studio anytime. You know, Paul will be happy for you to come along and just sit there." And I did once or twice. And she even got her photograph book out and went through all their photographs and said, "This is us up in Mulligantyre, you know, on the farm." And you know, I was just overwhelmed by that.
Yes, yes. I saw the, I guess it's the Paul McCartney, one of his biographies, or where you know, talking about her photography, and how that was to her. That's great that you got to look at the
wonderful.
Yeah. Well, I've really enjoyed what I've heard of your solo material, and I might have to say, I think I like it better than Pilot.
Oh wow!
Thank you. Not a knock on Pilot.
Okay.
But,
that's a compliment. Thank you very much.
Yeah, yeah. I like on your first couple of albums, Passion's Cry from '91 and Fragment from '96. I like the traditional Scottish sounding tracks with your accent, you know, your full-blown Scottish accent. I like that. You know, I probably won't say it. Let's see. This is the Robert Burns one. A Fond Kiss. A Fond Kiss.
A Fond Kiss, yeah.
A Fond Kiss. And then Scots Wahai. Scots Wahai. Scots Wahai.
Just like hey. It's hey. Just Scots Wahai.
Hey, there you go.
That means Scots who have.
Okay.
Okay. Scots who have.
And you don't, that's the thing with me, with international music, you don't have to really know the lyrics or what they're saying, you know, to enjoy the music, I think. But, but thank you for translating.
A lot of these songs, as you mentioned, the Robert Burns songs, and you really can't sing Scottish words in an English accent or an American accent. You have to use the Scottish vocabulary, and you have to use the accent for it to work. And lucky enough, you know, because I'm Scottish, there's a lot of slang words in there that people say, "What does Howf Magandy mean? What does this mean? What does that mean?" You know, and lucky enough, because I was brought up speaking this in an old-fashioned Scottish dialect. It's totally different from, say, a judge in a court or whatnot. It's the common language of Scots, and we all understand a lot of these slang words. And for me, it was great to sing them, and I had to use my Scottish voice. For some reason, you know, especially with rock music, we all adopt an American accent because that's where it originally was generated from. You know, it probably came from Black Americans originally. I'm not sure, but I would presume it would. You know, it would come from there. And it evolved in America with Elvis in the 50s. You know, so now when you sing a pop song or write a pop song, you just use an American accent. It just comes naturally for some reason. I don't know if anybody's ever said that to you before, but it's just the way it is.
Yeah, I've wondered.
And when you get guys like the Proclaimers, they don't. They sing in the Scottish.
I think that's
and it can make some people go, "Ooh, I don't like that," or a lot of people say, "Yes."
Right. Well, they have their own niche, I guess, you know, doing that, right?
They have, yeah.
I, for one, I've always wondered about that. You know, is it a conscious effort to sound American, or does it just come out naturally? You know, I always wondered about that. You know,
it just comes out naturally. When I'm singing Magic, I'm not singing in a Scottish accent. I'm singing the way it's just music, pop music in general. Yeah. We all adopt that accent.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then another one that's kind of harkens back to that, the Scottish, the traditional sound is This Honest Land from Fragment. I really enjoy that one.
That was one of my own compositions, trying to get a kind of Scottish feel to the album, to the flow of the album. I wrote the song probably, you know, a lot of Scots and Irish are nostalgic for Scotland. You know, so we're always singing songs, especially the Irish in America, you know, how wonderful Ireland is and whatnot. The Scots are the same, you know, we get homesick, although, you know, I lived in England for 10 years and I loved it. I loved being there. I lived in Spain and I loved it there. But I always hankered back to coming back to Edinburgh. There's no place like home.
Right, right. You hit the nail on the head there.
Mm.
But I also like the non-traditional, more modern sounding tracks like Fallen from Fragment. I like that one.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one's done real well.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. I like that song too.
Well, also, moving up to 2003, The Search, 3 tracks off of that. It's really hard for me to decide which is my favorite. We Are in Love, Too Many Ways, and Halfway There. Those are yeah, yeah.
Well, that album was originally an album I did for EMI, and they didn't release it. The songs were on that album.
Yeah.
It wasn't released. I think I recorded it around about 1980, and but they didn't release it. So you know, a lot of Pilot fans had heard about this album, and they asked me, you know, is it available anywhere? And I said, no, it's not. I even inquired with EMI, is it possible to get it re-released? And they said, no, it's deleted from stock. It's just not available at all. So I re-recorded the album, but Halfway There was written in 2007, I think you said, or 3.
2003.
When that album came out, The Search.
Yeah.
So so it's from a totally different time period, and I'm really glad you picked these 3 songs, because they suddenly came into my head when you mentioned them, and I thought, oh yeah, I remember that.
You remember those.
Yeah.
And then moving on to Fellow Man. I think that has your most gorgeous track that I've ever heard, Across the Oceans.
Wow.
I think that's just a beautiful, beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Wow. Yeah, it's coming into my head now. I hear it.
you know, this is what I classify as a gorgeous song. It's one of those goosebump inducing songs. You know what I'm talking? Yeah.
and for a songwriter, it's a thrill when somebody says that to you about a song, you know, that you've written. That's great that people get, you know, what I feel. Obviously, you know, when a writer is writing a song, you're totally immersed in it. Yeah. And when I write a song, you know, I get obsessive, very obsessive, and I can spend maybe a week on perfecting it, you know, thinking, oh, I've sung that word slightly wrong, I'll need to re-record that word, or whatnot, or that bass part, you know, just perfecting a song, you know. So for somebody else to say after you've put all that work into something, I really like that song, I'm really happy to hear that.
It's one of those, you kind of get lightheaded a little bit, tingly, and you know, just it's beautiful. And I don't know who did the video for that, but it's a nice video.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll have a look. I'm not sure if I've seen it.
Oh, well, yeah, watch that, because it really enhances the song and vice versa.
Great.
It's landscapes from different, you know, parts of the world.
Wow.
It really is really nice.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Moving to 2009's The Studio Diary songs. I like this, and I don't know if it was your first venture into this kind of genre, but I liked it. Last Night. It kind of, to me, it kind of has that country and western kind of feel.
That's what I was trying to get with it.
Yeah. And
I liked the theme. How did you do what you did last night? Can you do it again for me soon? I like that. Yes. And you know, you can get mileage out of a title.
Right. Exactly. A good title. You're right. You're right. That's what. Yeah, I have an affinity for that type of music as well. Of course, being from
Oh,
here.
me too. Yeah. I was a big fan of George Jones. I
Oh,
loved
okay.
his music.
Okay.
And I listened to bands like, oh, have you heard the Brothers Landreth?
I've heard of the name, but I haven't listened to anything.
Oh, wow. Wow. Well, that's not country music, but it's very American. It's just great, like Jackson Browne kind of thing. It's just
Okay.
great stuff.
Americana, kind of like.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. I will. Brothers Landreth. I'll check them out.
They're excellent.
I'll check them out.
Okay.
And then Under the Sun from 2012. I think my favorite track is Let It Go. Off of that.
Okay.
You have a story about that?
Not really. I pretended it was about something else, but it was let it come, let it go, let it happen real slow. It's kind of sex orientated, which sometimes creeps into my repertoire.
And to your psyche. That's nice. I think a lot of us are in that same boat. I think.
Oh yeah, well, part of the personality. You can't disguise it.
As long as you're living and breathing. Maybe so. We'll talk a little bit about the pilot projects. You referred to that earlier. One from 2014 and another from 2019.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I did mention that the 2014 album was really put together with Ian in mind, and how disappointed he was that he wasn't working with Alan anymore. And this was just a way to help him express himself again, and to play all these wonderful guitar parts and release them under the pilot banner, but also hinting towards the Alan Parsons Project. So I kind of touched on that earlier. By the time I did the second album, which was another pilot project, APP again, Ian's condition had deteriorated, so I couldn't have Ian involved in that. So that was one that I put together myself. I think I was happier with the production on that, basically because technology is evolving so fast. And the computer that I use and the software that I use now, it can give Abbey Road a run for its money. So I was happier with the production on that, and I kind of experimented a bit more with the arrangements of the songs. And I did sing "I'd Rather Be a Man," and it's totally different from the original recording of "I'd Rather Be a Man," but I still tried to keep it appealing in some way, hopefully.
Right. Well, I think it is. Judging from your fans and their reaction, I think so. The album 2020, nice title, appropriate. Watching You. That's I really like that one.
A song for my wife, of course.
Okay.
And that album was written during lockdown. So I spent a lot of time in the studio writing songs and taking my time as well. And I even did videos of me constructing the songs, putting the songs together. And I think that there's a few on YouTube now of, how did this song come together? So I did that, and I just, had lots of spare time in my hands.
Right.
No live work at all.
Well, I think it was it kind of became a fruitful period for songwriters because you're stuck at home. What else can you do?
Exactly.
It was bad for touring, and people playing live concerts, of course, but for writing songs, I think it was it
was a very productive time.
Yeah, blessing in disguise.
Yeah, if you were a creative person, it was great. You couldn't do anything else, so you kind of dedicated yourself to your studio. I'm sure artists and whatnot would have the same, time on their hands.
Right. Another track off of that, going back to it might have been a little full circle, going back to the Bulls in Spain, and then the guitar that you were hearing, Spanish Soul.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Again, I'm a sucker for nice Spanish guitar. So.
All right. I wasn't sure how that would be received, but I enjoyed putting it together. When you start with a basic idea and watch it evolving into a full song, it's such a thrill to sit back after it's completed and listen to it and think, wow, that came from nothing. It just came from something that popped into my head, and listen to it now, it's a full song. It's still a great thrill for me to do that. I love songwriting more than anything else.
Yeah. Well, you kind of referred earlier about you may be a bit of a perfectionist when it comes to songwriting.
Perfectionist and obsessive. And I think that's part of the success, being so obsessed with what you're doing and being able to focus 100%. You mentioned getting piano lessons or whatnot. I think it is the focus and the obsession in it as well. Like I said, when I picked up a guitar for the first time, it was an obsession. I just dedicated myself. I think it's because it was the sense of achievement, because I wasn't really academic when it came to school. And, I felt like I wasn't achieving very much, but when I picked up a guitar and got a tune out of it, I thought, I'm achieving something here.
Right.
That was it.
And you got some kind of reward and satisfaction out of doing
That's
that,
it. That's it. Yeah.
So, and again, with musicians, I admire them so much because it's there for posterity. I mean, whether you recorded 20, 30 years ago or you're recording today, once it's recorded, it's going to be there for future generations. So it's
I know, long after you're gone.
Right. That's what people, when I ask them, I say, do you prefer recording or playing live? And a lot of them will say that, the recording, because you have that, and people can hear it years later. The live thing it's fleeting in a way. It's like it's there for the moment, unless it's recorded.
It's there for 2 hours of your life and then it's gone. Yeah, but the recording is there forever. Exactly. I've always gone by that. Sure.
Yeah. The only thing about that is that the recording doesn't have is that immediate response from the audience. That connection and making that immediate. So there's pluses and to be said for both, I guess. But
sure.
We'll talk about you're working with your daughter Sadie on a couple of singles. Talk about that. That must have been fun.
Yeah, well, Sadie's always had a talent for music. She never, she didn't have the obsession or focus that I had, but she always had the talent. She pursued acting for a while and sung in a couple of bands in Edinburgh. But it wasn't her priority in life. She has her son and her family life, and she's focused on that. But I heard the song from the Alan Parsons Project, and I thought, I think Sadie could sing this well. And I just said to her, would you like to try this in the studio with me? And she said, yeah. She's quite a shy girl and was a bit shy about singing in front of her dad, but I got her to do it. And I just suddenly noticed a quality in her voice that I hadn't heard before. Maybe it's because she's a bit older now, but there is a quality there that I really like. And so I've recorded 4 or 5 songs with her. And, it's kind of on the back pedal for both of us most of the time. But occasionally, she might phone me up and say, well, Dad, I've got another song I'd like to sing. And I'll say, let me hear it. And I'll put together a backing track for you and then come up and sing it. So we have a great relationship in the studio. She's so quick, usually first take. And then she'll say, I need a wee, I need to go, Yeah, it goes like that. It's a lot of fun, a lot of joy.
Is she your only child?
No, I have a younger daughter than Sadie. She's 9 years younger. She's very, very qualified, and she's a paralegal.
Okay. She doesn't have that. She doesn't have that musical gene that Sadie.
Not as much as Sadie has, and I think again she's a bit shy as well. The shyness seems to run through the family.
well, thankfully you overcame that. Yeah.
I had to. There was no alternative. I was forced into
it. Right. Well, you mentioned at the very beginning about the Magic collection, and so the book Magic, is that kind of a companion to the CD?
It is. I kind of saw it. I thought, and now's the time to retire from live music.
Yeah.
So I've kind of thought, no, I won't do any more live music. And I thought, well, maybe that's the end of my career, but I'm not sure if it is, but it seems to have gone full circle with me putting out the Magic collection and releasing my book as well. It tells the whole story from beginning to what probably is the end. I'm not sure. Not sure at all what's going to happen next. You can never tell. But for me, I thought, it's nice to have a beginning and a kind of end. And the book was originally came together just because I had done a lot of things in my life, and I thought this would be good for my grandkids and great grandkids to read about the life that I had. Yeah. So that was originally why I wrote the book, and it just evolved. And the putting together of the pilot songs was, as you mentioned earlier, some artists will listen to their earlier music and think, ooh, cringe a little bit, And I always thought when I listened back to the early pilot stuff that I sang that in too high a key. I could have sung it lower. And I found that playing these songs like Lucky for Some in a low key with a guitar, it just sounded so nice to me. And to be able to sing it without straining or whatnot, but still, I felt like I got more emotion into the songs the way that I've recorded them now than the way I did then. It was all very clinically put together way back then. I mentioned that Alan would spend a whole day on one track, and it became very clinical. But the way I did it here, it was just, I'll just sing it and play it. And I was happy with the interpretation. And for me, again, it's like a full circle. I've gone back to where I started.
Right. Well, your voice is still in fine fettle, I think, from what I've heard of your latest material. So is there anything that you take for that to keep it in fine form?
No, there's things I should do. I was worried about it at one point a couple of years ago. In fact, just after lockdown, and I had stopped playing live, and I thought, oh, maybe it's because I'm not exercising my voice enough, but I found it getting very gravelly. Mm-hmm. And I approached the NHS, and they gave me a lot of treatment for my voice. I'm not sure if it's helped or not, because I don't do it now yet. I've just written a song and my voice is fine. It's when I speak softly, my voice is a bit hoarse. But when I sing out or speak loudly, it's fine. I suppose I'm lucky. I'm 73 and I can still sing and carry a melody. And I'm happy with that. Delighted that voice is still there. A lot of guys get to my age and they lose their voice. Although I listen to Stevie Wonder and I think, wow, that guy can still really sing.
Still, you're right. Very true. Well, was the writing the book, was it a bit of a cathartic experience for you?
It was certainly very nostalgic, and it's funny when you write about one particular time, a lot of memories come back, and you can the memories, it starts to flow. You know, you think, oh, and that happened right after that, and then this happened. I did find it very emotional going through, especially the pilot period. It's like therapy. You know, you're going through, you're recalling all the
Right.
good times and the bad times.
Uh,
Yeah, so it was very therapeutic in that way. And it was nice to recall some of the stories that I got a kick out of. You know, I thought, oh, that was a funny thing that happened there. And it was nice to put them in writing. And I've had a lot of good feedback about some of these stories with some of the people that I worked with, you know.
Right, right. Well, I wanted to, again, thank you in advance for sending that. My
Oh,
way.
pleasure.
I appreciate that. And I'm definitely going to dive into it.
Great.
What is in the works now or on the immediate horizon for David?
Well, I haven't thought about live work. I don't think well, that's on the back burner for me. It's just recording, writing and recording.
Yeah.
I wrote, so, once I get focused, I can write. It's like a door opening when I write a song. It's like a door opening above me and a door in my head opening to make the connection. And suddenly it all starts to flow. It just, you know, it just comes, and I feel like saying, thank you. Thank you for that. It just comes from nowhere. It just appears.
Yeah.
And it's a great thrill and a privilege to still be creative. That the creative aspect of being a musician is the part that I enjoy the most.
Right.
As I say, creating something from nothing. It's such a thrill.
I hear that. I hear that. And then reaching the audience. I'm sure that you're still getting lots of fan mail, emails, and people posting on your social media about how much the music has meant to them. And are you finding you're reaching a lot of newer fans lately? Have you noticed?
Yeah, I still get the odd requests from people that are a lot younger, you know, and the orders for the CDs and the book are still flowing in. I'm quite happy to continue as long as the demand is still there. I'm delighted that it is still there.
Yeah. Well, I have to say that I was a little surprised when you were so readily available or interested in doing it, because I thought, well, some big shot like David Paton, he's gonna be like, no. Well, you need to talk to my agent first. And so no, I don't mean that. I don't mean that way. But I was a little bit. Wow, okay, this is great. Great.
Well, I'm happy to talk. You know, it's great to talk to you.
Yeah. Well, I think to me, it's a no-brainer for me. I mean, if well, I mean, there are some reservations, I'm sure, and time is always of the essence. People are busy, but if you do have the time, and like you said, people like to talk about themselves, musicians, so that's what this is about. That's what this is about.
Sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, David, it's been a good, long, lengthy time that we've talked. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, thank you for. It was great to talk to you. You covered a lot of. You've covered everything very comprehensively, and it's great. I enjoy doing this kind of thing.
Yeah, I do too, and that's what mine's about. It's not the typical interview, that you probably are used to or whatever. I want to cover the whole gamut as much as possible. Yeah,
and it's quite relaxed. I'm quite happy.
There you go. That's what I'm about. That's what I'm going for. Is just a casual, the kind of conversation. And, a nice chat. That's what I like. So, all right. Well, David, you're getting ready to. You said on the 15th, you're going on vacation, or
the 17th.
Oh, the 17th. Okay.
The 17th. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm going to speak.
I'm glad we got to do this before you left then. Okay.
Great.
All right. All right. Well, David, we will be in touch. Let's keep in touch. And
Okay.
I'll let you know once I get this edited down. And I think there's going to be a lot of editing to do, actually.
Yeah.
And then I'll shoot you over the link.
Okay.
And then you can post it on your media.
I'll do that.
And I'll let you know when it's live.
Okay. Great, Greg. Excellent.
See what kind of reactions we get.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Lovely talking to you.
All right. Well, thank you, David, and you have a good rest of the weekend. Okay.
Thank you. Okay. Okay. I'll look forward to hearing from you again.
Okay. Thank you, David.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.